Tempest 2000 is often regarded as the Atari Jaguar's killer app, and as we all remember, the Atari Jaguar went on to pretty much flop, and its killer games got ported elsewhere. This Sega Saturn version of Tempest 2000 is often considered the best port of the game, so let's pop it on and see if it lives up to the hype. So first off, we can see it's got that Meltovision intact. That's that weird effect that zooms in and kind of looks like it's melting. It is missing the Jaguar's really cool menu music, but that's a minor annoyance. So let's start the game and see how it plays. Tempest 2000 came out in 1993, a year where techno music and raves were starting to get traction, but still weren't quite mainstream. Tempest 2000 really captures the feel of that era of dance music well, and almost draws a parallel between the sensory overload of a rave and the sensory overload of a classic 80s arcade game, because Tempest is based on the original Tempest game from the early 80s. And it does a really great job bringing Tempest into the 90s while keeping the core gameplay intact. I can probably count on one hand the number of games which are remakes of classic arcade games that really get it right. Both this and Galaga 88 would be on that list. So aside from lots of colors and flying pixels and a rave soundtrack, what does this really add to the Tempest formula? Well, first of all, there are lots of power-ups, including one that lets you jump to get rid of enemies that are on the edges. There's also a particle laser which lets you fire faster, and my favorite, an AI bot that follows you around and zaps enemies with you. So this is a really great update to the original Tempest. The question is, how is the Saturn port of this game? Well, it's extremely fluid. It runs at a full frame rate, which is more than I can say for the original Jaguar version. The Jaguar original had a tendency to drop frames when things got really hectic. Not so in the Saturn version, which runs at a full 60 frames a second, no matter how much stuff is blowing up on screen. Now, if you're familiar with the Jaguar version, you might be thinking, this is missing sound effects. Well, they're not missing, they're just very low in the mix. I actually turned down the sound effects because the laser is so loud that it tends to drown out the music, which of course then makes the voices so quiet that they're basically inaudible. So as good as this port is, the sound mix is completely catawampus. I also have to say that I prefer the soundtrack from the Jaguar original. This version features CD audio and it's very nicely produced, but I just feel that the original soundtrack was more raw. Being a cartridge game, the original one featured music off the cart, and it was in the mod format, which you might remember from the Amiga, so it was very lo-fi, crunchy, and noisy, and I kind of like that. Now, people have accused the Saturn version of having control lag, and I actually haven't experienced that. But what I have noticed is that the little claw thing that you control pivots a little bit before it changes lanes, and I believe that happens on every version of Tempest 2000, and I seem to remember it also from the arcade original. Of course, in that one you have a spinner, and because of the increased responsiveness of a spinner compared to a D-pad, it's kind of a moot point. Anyway, the upshot is that the controls aren't as tight as many kind of traditional shoot-'em-up games. In Tempest 2000, you kind of want to go left and right with kind of a watering the lawn motion, pausing when you need to, keeping in mind how long it's going to take to reverse direction, and kind of passing between shots that way. I think it would have been a better game had you been able to reverse direction immediately, but it plays pretty well the way it is. Another skill in Tempest 2000 is being able to see through this whole storm of pixels flying everywhere, which is also kind of the charm of Tempest 2000. Like I said in the intro, it's about sensory overload. Tempest 2000 is followed by 2 sequels by the same author, Jeff Minter, Tempest 3000 for the Nuon console, and TXK for the Vita and PlayStation TV. But of course, that just got cease and desisted by Atari. I believe it's still available, but future ports of the game have been cancelled, which is really too bad. I think a lot of modern gamers really remember Tempest 2000 more than the original Tempest, even though they're both really great games. And if you like this kind of pixel storming intensity, check out Jeff Minter's other games. He writes games under the name Llamasoft and has for many years, ever since the early 80s. A game that shares this kind of pixel storming intensity on a modern system is Grid Runner, which is a sequel to a game he wrote way back in the day. It is fantastic, but it is also for iOS and Android, so if you really despise touch controls, you might not really like that one all that much. But anyway, wrapping up Tempest 2000, I really do think is a great version of the game, and if you have a Saturn, it's well worth it. If you have a Jaguar, grab that version, and the PC DOS version is also quite good. Okay, well, this is Cool and Unusual Games. Be sure to subscribe for more reviews, and I'll catch you next time.